Thanks everybody for coming. What we're going to be talking about today is we're going to be doing a little bit of an exit planning workshop. We're going to be spending about 15-20 minutes talking about the process of selling a business, and Steve's going to spend a little time talking about getting your valuations up. I've given y'all a packet to kind of refer to. This is kind of the outline that I'm going to be going off of. If y'all have any questions throughout the process, feel free to stop me. We'll also have some time at the end where you can bounce some ideas off of us and whatnot. I am recording the first part. I won't be recording the questions afterwards in case y'all want to ask anything that's a little bit more specific. And we'll just kind of handle things as they pop up. Anything before we get started? Cool. All right. First things first, we're talking about how to exit your business successfully. There's lots of different ways that you can exit a business, and one of the most common ones is death. A lot of people don't plan for an exit of their business, and that's certainly one way to do it, and it's certainly not ideal. So what we're talking about today is other ways that are more successful ways to exit your business than exiting by default. Come on in and grab your seat. You didn't miss anything. I was just catching everybody up on the front end. So. And by the way,
I like how you got glitter in that.
Yeah, sit anywhere you like.
I wouldn't have told him.
I'll take the nice chair.
First things first, the best way to kind of frame these things is a who, what, when, where, how type scenario. So a lot of folks look at selling their business and they see their business, they see what they bleed, sweat, stress about, and lose sleep over. They don't necessarily see the other side of the coin. Why would somebody want to buy my business? And that's typically a question that people don't ask themselves until much too late. So it's very important for us to go ahead and kick off why people buy businesses. First off, most commonly, there is a strategic acquisition. Either you're in a geographic area, you're in a market that another company wants to be in, and this is very common for arm's length third-party transactions, which I'll get to. But somebody is buying you to get access to a customer base. It's what we call strategic acquisitions. There is either you, like I said, you're in a geographic area, you have a product that appeals to a certain market, maybe your branding appeals to a certain market. All of these are strategic acquisitions in which potentially a competitor, potentially a vendor might want to get into. The other reason is because cash flow. Either something that you've done is very successful, it's a way for them to either expose themselves to greater cash flow opportunities, maybe it's a little bit more consistent business than what they currently have. And so there's some predictability as far as the financials are concerned that might be interesting to a company that might already have a presence in your area, but maybe your financials are just a little bit more attractive or something that they're looking for. Assets and inventory. Now this goes from the very, very bottom end to the very, very high end. At the very, very worst, an asset and inventory sale involves a fire sale. Somebody's passed away, we need to get rid of the stuff. To the best case scenario, we have a lot of intellectual property, potentially a patent, that we are selling this particular asset and we're not selling anything else. The reason that somebody might be interested in this is there might not be a lot of assets or inventory in this particular area. An individual that I spoke with not too long ago was buying equipment from a previous company that no one else in the world still made. So you had to buy what somebody else already had. Another instance is which you have a patent, something where there's a high barrier to entry. You might be buying a patent, something that nobody has access to. And so you're buying the market, you're buying the product that allows you access to that. But like I said, it does go the other way. You can have a fire sale where literally you are selling chairs and tables, which unfortunately there's some law firms that are going and doing that same thing. I had to speak to some of those that were trying to liquidate some of their chairs and tables, and they were basically giving them away because the value of the tables and chairs giving to a donation to a nonprofit was actually higher than they would have gotten at resale. Obviously not an ideal situation. Also, there's defensive moves. A lot of people don't think about this when they're thinking about selling their business, but there's definitely a strategic reason to buy a business in order to prevent a competitor from getting into the same business. One of the big acquisitions was Google just bought a company, I think they're out of South Carolina. Just paid a ridiculous sum of money, I think $30 million, and this company had never sold a product. But they made a mapping service that was in the crosshairs of Yahoo and Microsoft. And Google couldn't afford to have them in their market, so they made a defensive acquisition so that that technology would not be available to their competitors. This is rare. It doesn't happen that it's not often that you see a defensive play, but it is one of the reasons why people buy a business. Finally, integration. This can be horizontal or vertical integration. This is typically an acquisition by a vendor. You have a vendor that either provides the same kind of services or products that you do, and they want to cut one middleman out of it. So you might have a retail distributor that gets integrated with the distributor. You might have a manufacturer that decides that they want to acquire a retail location. These are all reasons that you would have an integrative strategy. Who buys businesses? As we talked about a lot of this is our next section. Not only why, but who buys the businesses. Typically, a big area of acquisition is a competitor. A lot of people don't think about it. We've been fighting tooth and nail against this company across town for 20 years. Why would I ever sell to them? Well, there might be multiple reasons that they would be interested in buying you. Now they have one less competitor in the market. That's a defensive move. You might also have access to a geographic territory that they haven't previously had access to. So competitors are typically a pretty good pool of folks to look for to buy your business. Vendors, like I said, integration. If somebody is in one level of the distribution string and they want to have exposure in another area, they might be interested in integrating. You also have employees. This is very, very common. A lot of folks don't see this. It's not sexy. It doesn't make the newspaper when an employee buys the business, but this is very, very common. You typically have an employee who's been working for several years. They save up enough money in order to buy the business. They owner finance it for years. Or in the other situation, you have somebody that is maybe a family member who's been working in the business, and they inherit the business after the original owner passes away. This is also common. Family members buying a business, whether they want to or not, they become the owners of it. Finally, investment firms. These are the sexy ones that you hear about, but they're less than 1% of total transactions. These just don't happen very often. Your traditional ones are angel investors, which do early stage financing, venture capitalists who do more later early stage to mid stage, and then investment banks, which really go, they scan all the way from down to the bottom, all the way up to large private companies. And then you also have going public as one of these options. But we're not really going into that because that's a whole different conversation. How businesses buy businesses. This is our next area. If I'm going too fast for everybody, let me know. How businesses buy business. The first two are legal terms. These are the two ways that you can buy a business. You have either an asset purchase or you have a stock purchase. These are really the two ways to do it. So you either buy the stuff the business owns or you buy the business itself. If you buy the stuff that it owns, you may not be buying everything that it owns. You clearly have to delineate what we're actually buying, what we're not buying, what we're not assuming liability for. There's some tax advantages to it, but it may not be the best case scenario because it's fairly expensive, especially if you have a lot of registered equipment, cars, property. There's a whole lot of legal fees that go along with an asset purchase that can make it can drive up that expense very quickly. A stock purchase is cleaner. You literally exchange stock certificates, and the downside of that is while it's cleaner, on the front end, you take on liabilities. So all the fleas that the dog has, you now have. If you have HR problems, those problems are now yours. If you have pending liabilities, lawsuits pending, those are now your problems. If you've got back taxes that haven't been paid in the last 30 years and you haven't been filing your returns when you're supposed to, guess what? You're on the hook for those too. So that's the reason why that's typically not as common, but there's some benefits to it, and some of them are tax reasons. Other ways that you can do it is through this. You can do an employee purchase or being wielded. These are two different ways that you can do it that are just derivations of the first two. Employee purchasing can do it through an asset purchase or do it through a stock purchase, or you can have somebody that literally has a family member die and judge of probate says, congratulations, you're now 100% owner of such and such company. There was actually a case that came down that determined which kids received the grandfather's business, which obviously creates a lot of problems. Anyway. Now, next thing I want to talk about is what businesses buy when they buy a business. Now, this sounds like, oh, it makes a lot of sense. You're buying a business. Typically, no. A business, when it's acquiring a business, is buying a specific set of things. They know what they want. They know what they want to acquire, and they go after it. If you're on the business end that's selling, you're typically saying, oh, well, we have this great team, we have these great products, whatnot. None of that may matter. It 100% depends on who is buying your company and why. Determines what they will ultimately purchase in your company. And one of the biggest things that they're going to purchase, one of the most valuable assets, is that little line item that shows up on your accounting balance sheet, goodwill. Everybody has heard of goodwill. Nobody really knows what goodwill is. What goodwill is, and I'll tell you, because I have experience with goodwill, goodwill is recurring revenue and your brand. Goodwill is the valuation that we attach to the cash flow that your business creates and the inherent value of your business. It's just the fancy accounting word that we put to it. But it's two very specific things. How much money can you expect to make next month if you did nothing this month? If we were to take your company and to show it to somebody, would they know who it is, what you do, what you sell, and what makes you better than your competition? Those are the two things that matter in goodwill. If you can't identify those two things, don't expect for another company that's acquiring you to be able to figure those two things out. These two things are very, very important. Next thing is intellectual property. And now, I said branding before. Trademarks is a part of intellectual property, which there's some bleed over in there. But you might be interested in buying trademark or intellectual property when you're buying a business. Intellectual property typically comes in 4 areas. I've done some other talks on intellectual property. I'm not going to hit on all of them. But, for instance, they might be interested in your customer list. How often do you do business with such and such person? How much do they spend per month? Are they on a contract? Can we expect for them to continue to do business with you? This is a confidential trade secret. All of this information is legally protectable. You might have a patent, something that you've gone through the process of registering at the Patent and Trademark Office, something that's very valuable that you know that you have exclusive rights to that you're going to sell to somebody. They might be very interested in buying that piece of intellectual property. A lot of people think patents are the most valuable pieces of a business. It's typically not. Typically the most valuable piece is the goodwill, and the largest part of that is branding, which include your trademarks. If you have not taken the steps to legally protect your intellectual property, specifically products that you've designed and created, your name, anything that identifies your business, if you've not registered these things, they're worthless. I'll reemphasize that. With every single type of intellectual property except for confidential trade secrets, if you have not registered them, they are not worth a penny. I deal with so many companies that say that our name is very, very valuable, recognized in the area. You've got a family name. It's not legally protectable under trademarks. Somebody tomorrow with the same name could open up the exact same business and run on the exact same thing, and you would have no ability to stop them from doing it. There's no barrier to entry. So, third thing is hard assets. Also can be, it depends on the type of business. If you are a commercial real estate company, hard assets are very, very valuable to you. You have exclusive rights to have this particular thing that I can hit with a hammer. Sometimes, like I said, in a fire sale, your inventory is probably not worth a whole lot. So Hard assets can go from one end of the scale, just like everything else. It can go from one end of the scale to the other. Finally, leadership team. This is another one of those things that if you haven't taken the chance to legally protect yourself, it's not worth a whole bunch. Alabama's an at-will employment state. Your guys can leave you tomorrow and go to your competition. If I am looking to buy a business, I am looking at what's preventing the leadership team from going and working for my competition. If you haven't taken the steps to protect that, it's not worth anything to me. You might say that we have the best CFO on the block. And I'll say, okay, where's his employment contract? Where's his non-compete? If it doesn't exist, he's not worth anything to me. I'm not going to pay $1 because he might have some kind of problem that my guy has buying the business. He says that we need to do this. He says no, and he's gone next week. You're not going to pay $30,000 to have access to a CFO that lives and works for your competition in 2 weeks. It's just not going to happen. When to sell your business? This is always a fun question. And part of the reason why I brought out this big board that I didn't bring other. Two most important things in a business: time and money. Over time, every single business follows a traditional growth trajectory. When you're starting up, you make no money. When your business starts doing well, it starts making a lot of money. It gets to a point where it's not making as much money anymore. Then it starts losing money. We give names to this. You have the rising star. You have the cash cow. You have the donkey. In management circles, we call these things all different things. Bottom line is, this is your growth curve. The time to sell your business is not here. 90% of businesses sell here. Do not do this. The best time to sell your business is right here. Why? If I'm looking at a business and I look at your growth curve, I see this. If I'm looking at your business over here, I'm seeing this. That's the difference between a successful business and an unsuccessful business sale. When we buy a business, we're looking to get our money back in a certain period of time. We'll say that's 5 years. If you're here, I see a lot more growth potential. We might be buying a dog. But I see your growth curve. I see the potential to make a lot of money. I'm willing to pay a lot more money to get into that business than I am here. This business is not worth anything. So when to sell your business? How much time does it actually take to sell your business? Typically takes at least 12 months. If you are looking to sell your business, it's going to take you at least a year. The process is slow. It's painful. Just deal with it. Ideally, and this is 12 months if you push it. Ideally, you want it to be anywhere between 3 to 5 years. This gives you the chance to put the things in place necessary in order to protect your business, get it ready for sale. Most successful businesses plan for their sale more than 7 years out. Ultimately, the bottom line is, what's your upward sloping trend line? When I see this, I see a good business. When I see this, I see a business that's tanking, and I'm going to wait until you go bankrupt, and I'm going to buy your stuff at a fire sale. Just like getting a loan, proving to a bank that they should give you money because you don't need the money. Best time to sell your business is when you don't need to sell your business. When your business is doing well, everything looks great, and everybody's wondering why the heck are they trying to sell their business. That's the best time, because you can get folks in a bidding war. Nobody wants this business. Finally, I want to wrap up on some X factors. There's some different factors that play in on businesses that make them give a high valuation or a low valuation. I just want to hit them a little bit. Like I said, growth potential. If I'm looking at this and I'm saying that you've got a great idea, a great product, you don't have the leadership team currently in place in order to take your business to the next level, but I can integrate it with my business, add in my leadership team, make everything work the way that it works on our processes, and we can stop this downward sloping trend line. That's an X factor for me. When you see a business that has intellectual property that maybe excludes somebody else and it has the ability, not only does it have an existing market penetration or something like that, but people recognize that they're willing to buy it and it's catching on, that's when you want to buy it. Everybody wants MySpace when MySpace is going up. Nobody wants MySpace now. So your X factor is your growth potential. How quickly can we get to the maximum number of potential customers possible? Another X factor, reoccurring contractual, underlying contractual revenue. A lot of people say, hey, I have a bunch of people that come in, I have a lot of foot traffic, 20,000 people walk past my store every single day, and at least 1% of those people will walk in and buy stuff from me. It's great. More power to you. You've got a good business. You don't have an X factor business. You've got consistent, predictable, recurring revenues, but they're under no obligation to continue doing business with you. The most successful business model right now is the SaaS model, software as a service. The reason it works is you don't have to buy a big software package up front to cover all your folks. But you sign up once, you pay a monthly fee over a period of time. You sign in order to get a discount, you sign a contract. 10% discount in order to do, we'll sign you up for 12 months. It's a great business model. The reason it works, you know what you're going to get every single month. And if they break a contract, you can sue them. And they have to pay for your attorney. So contractual relationships can be the X factor in your business. This is really big for development companies that do stuff with the government. If you have a 10-year contract to build a highway through the northern bypass in Alabama, that's a pretty good contract. There's actually a very good story, I think it was Harvard, from BL Harvard, told the story of his very first contract that he ever got was just him. And he was supposed to build out a $300,000 project. He had no guys. He took the contract, immediately turned around and sold the contract to somebody else who paid him $270,000 for the contract. He made $30,000 profit on nothing. Recurring revenue is great because you know exactly what you're going to get, you know what your expenses are going to be, and provide some predictability. Substantial barriers to entry. This is kind of a nebulous term, but that's what it is. If you have a market lockdown, if you have a product that nobody else can use, if you have a geographic territory that nobody else can get to, that's a great barrier to entry. If you have a patent, legal protections, other things in your business, if you are in a highly regulated industry, this can be potentially very good. It also opens you up to some other problems if you're in a highly regulated industry. I don't think anybody's really looking to get into banking right now. So there's some barriers to entry that also can discourage even folks that are in there now. But it can help with the potential X factor in your business. Finally, that other wild X factor is this is a market that has not existed before, or it's relatively young and it's maturing. This used to have 20,000 users. We're expecting that it's going to have 400 million in the next 3 years. Broadband internet's a fantastic example of something that has a growing market. So if you're in one of those markets that has exposure to customers that have never even used your product, but they're familiar with it, that can help you out.
We're going to talk about the why factor today, if you will. Why you're going to sell your business. Page 2 talks about 5 ways to grow your business. And the reason why you want to grow it is because you typically are going to fall into the Tripp's category of 90% of the people don't know the right time to sell their business. And they overvalue it. My business is worth $3 million. Where'd you come up with that number? It could have been a dream, it could have been any reason. Typically, business owners value their business based on their revenues, which really doesn't have anything to do with the value of it. There are dozens of ways to value a business. One of the most common ways is profits. a factor of profits, a multiple of profits. So if you properly plan to grow your business, the right time, the right setting, you've got the right prospects out there, you're really thinking through who you're gonna sell to, whether it's employees or venture capitalists or anybody in between, it's important for you to really know what you're gonna get out of it. A great way, exposed here are the 5 ways to grow your business. Generating leads, converting those leads to clients or customers. Once you have the client or customer, you sell them more and more often. Another key strategy is selling the things where you make the most money. Margins. Do you understand what product or service that you sell has the most margin? In dollars, not percentage. Percents can be deceiving. In dollars, what products do you sell that make the most dollars in volume? I'm going to share an example with you on the next page of what the impact is on growing these 5 elements of your business. This particular business made $150,000 2 years ago. They've got 5,000 leads. They convert half of their leads into clients or customers. They have 2,500 customers. They sell to them once a quarter, 4 times a year at $100 per transaction. They've got $1 million in revenue. They have a 15% profit margin. They made $150,000. That's on top of paying everybody that works in the company, family, owners, all of that. The strategies that we help small businesses with help to improve those 5 ways. Again, lead generation, converting leads to clients, having clients buy more and more often, and doing a good job of analyzing your margins. What happened to this business owner at increasing these strategies by 10% in a year, his profits are up $90,000. Went from 150 to 240. 90,000. If you go back to the valuation method of sustained profits, Tripp was talking about recurrence. Recurrence, consistent, a trend of profits is going to yield a higher price. So in this case, if this guy wants to sell his business and he's making $100,000 and we use an expected ROI from the buyer of 10%, the factor is he's going to be able to sell that for $1 million. ROI from the buyer. 10% means if you make 100, it's a 10-year period. So you'll be able to sell under this logic for $1 million. Make sense to everybody? 150 brings it to $1.5 million. So this is this owner's expectation. The assumption is that he can perpetuate 5 years worth of consistent profits at 150. If we work the 5 ways, he's at 241 per year. His business is worth now $2.4 million. Got 5 years of consistent profits. Now there's a lot of variables like Tripp talked about that can throw a kink into that. It depends where the revenue source is. It depends on the contractual issues that you have. But if you focus on reoccurring profits without goodwill, which is a different valuation because that's off the balance sheet, then this common method is usually successful in selling the business. 10% return, 10 times earnings. If you get if you get a venture capitalist in there, they're going to want a 25% ROI. So the multiple now changes to 4. So now your business is only worth 400 here, it's only worth 600 here, and here it's worth a little bit less than $1 million. So who are you gonna sell to? You're gonna sell to a venture capitalist, or you're gonna sell to your employees? Someone that's gonna demand a lower ROI. So this takes a lot of planning. You have to have the key elements into place. You've gotta have non-competes, you've gotta have contract agreements, employment agreements with the employees. So this process typically takes longer. But if you have the 3 to 5 years to do it, to think about when do you want to retire, how much do I want to retire with, then you have the time to start planting the seeds so that you can grow your company the way you want to grow it. Here you have control, here you don't. So where are you? Start as early as you can, start thinking about it, and create your own future. That's all I have.